I had a car accident and ended up in the hospital, and suddenly I wanted to tease my boyfriend. Who are you? Seeing the expression on Henry's face, I couldn't help but laugh. Henry suddenly pointed at his good brother John. I am your boyfriend's brother, he is your boyfriend John. My expression froze. John stepped forward. Yes, I am your boyfriend. I broke into a smile. Then take me home. John took me back home. He said I have always lived here. I looked at this place that bore not a trace of my life, and like him, I nodded blindly. I slept on his bed for a while, and when I wanted to go out for a drink of water, I heard the sound of a conversation coming from the living room. John, when you help a brother out, act as Maria's boyfriend for a while. Aren't you afraid she might suddenly regain her memory? If she regains her memory and gets angry, I'll just coax her back. She loves me so much, she wouldn't really leave me. It's just that I've grown a bit weary of her from the past to now, so it's a good opportunity to take a breather and have some fun outside. It seems you really hit it off with that Sarah, just looking to take the opportunity to mess around with her. You know that's enough, but I definitely love Maria more. During this time, Maria is by your side, so don't mess with her. However, among the brothers, I am the most at ease with you. You seem to really dislike Maria. I backed up with my bare feet, walked to the door and made some noise, then walked back to the living room. John heard the noise and quickly turned off his phone and got up. The floor is cold, why aren't you wearing shoes? John hurried over and picked me up horizontally, placing me on the sofa. I'm thirsty, I said, as I struggled to find a place to get some water. I'll get you some. John walked over to the water dispenser and poured me a glass of water. He sat next to me, looking at me. Is there anywhere else that feels uncomfortable? I shook my head after drinking some water. He raised his hand to smooth my somewhat messy hair and leaned in to kiss my forehead. I paused for a moment. Just now, I heard Henry tell him not to mess with me. I also feel that John dislikes me. However, now, when he kissed my lips, I turned away. He gently stroked my face. You don't remember, let's take it slow, you can get to know me gradually. John seems to be deceiving his brother as well. When John brought me to the private room, it was already quite lively inside. A group of young gentlemen from the Beijing circle fell into a tacit silence upon seeing me, all looking towards Henry. Ah, Maria is here, do you remember me? I'm your college roommate Sarah. Sarah, sitting next to Henry, greeted her. I was brought by John to sit down, looked at her, and shook my head. Sorry. It's okay, everyone can get to know each other again. Sarah said, linking her arm with Henry's and leaning closely on his shoulder. This former college roommate, who later became a friend, seemed to assert ownership by hiding his pride behind Henry, thinking I had lost my memory. Henry also brought a different kind of thrilling feeling, being intimate with other women right in front of me. Yes, it's great that both of your boyfriends are in this circle. It's wonderful. You can often hang out together, and it doesn't matter if you forget or not. The other brothers and friends all tacitly spoke such words, as if carrying a malicious amusement in publicly humiliating someone who was unaware. Everyone continued playing the game. Henry and Sarah were eating the same cookie, and the more they ate, the closer their mouths got. Go ahead and kiss. Everyone's cheering. Henry then kissed Sarah deeply in such an atmosphere. Afterwards, Sarah shyly leaned against Henry, casting a secretly proud glance at me. Henry also contentedly held Sarah close. Then I lost the game and had to face a punishment, which was to kiss someone for 30 seconds. Everyone fell silent and looked at me. Were they curious about who I would choose? Would I instinctively point to Henry again? Henry seemed a bit nervous, his gaze avoiding mine. It seemed he didn't want me to have an instinctive reaction so soon. John beside me was also tense. I smiled. Of course, it's my boyfriend. I said, turning to John, shall we go then? I could clearly feel that John seemed to relax his nerves. He stared at me intently and leaned in closer. I took the initiative to wrap my arms around the back of his neck and kissed him. Wow. Another round of wow sounds followed. These people may have seen Henry hug other women and kiss other women, but they certainly never thought I would be like this with another man. So something particularly novel came out, but then suddenly it seemed to fall silent. John seemed to kiss without restraint, chasing after me. 30 seconds later, I pulled away, only to see Henry's sullen expression, which made everyone else suddenly fall silent. How ridiculous. John gently wiped away a bit of moisture from the corner of my mouth. What's going on with everyone? Didn't I already accept my punishment? I asked, as if puzzled by this strange atmosphere. Although Maria has amnesia, she hasn't become estranged from her boyfriend. Sarah's words were clearly mocking my foolishness due to amnesia. Henry's expression was even more displeased. I went to the restroom outside, but I heard voices coming from the stairway. John, I told you not to touch her, that was quite unkind of you. Henry said coldly. It's just a game, she has amnesia. Are you really expecting her to look for a boyfriend when you're right there with another woman? That's not realistic, is it? After all, I am now the boyfriend you've chosen for her. John smiled. Henry fell silent. Well, just be mindful of your boundaries. Although I don't believe you would actually be interested in Maria and sleep with her, you can still avoid some overly intimate contact, right? Otherwise, you won't be able to bear it yourself, and I would feel bad about it, wouldn't I? You really know me. Back at John's villa. Just as I was about to enter the room, he grabbed me. Without saying a word, he leaned down and kissed me. I wanted to pull away, but he held me tightly. After a long while, he finally let go, caressing my face and whispering, "Today we took a step forward, didn't we? We can gradually get to know each other more." I looked up at him in a daze. He seemed to contradict what he had said to his brother again. I didn't understand him. My family background is worlds apart from Henry's, and it was he who gradually helped me accept that. Later, I got to know some of his friends, a group of young masters from Beijing, especially John. John hates me and looks down on me, it's a consensus among his circle. He always mocks my feelings for Henry. In the past, I could avoid him whenever possible. But after I lost my memory and was forcibly paired with him by Henry, he repeatedly takes this opportunity to do such things. Is it to take revenge on Henry for pairing us up? My designer job is relatively flexible, and I often work from home. John knocked on the door and came in. "You've worked hard, there are fireworks tonight, let's go see." Arriving at the lakeside where the fireworks were being set off, Henry and Sarah stood in the best spot, watching the grand display of fireworks. Sarah leaned against Henry and suddenly jumped up happily, giving him a quick kiss on the face, so adorable. Henry smiled at her and gave her nose a gentle rub. He turned his head and saw us. When Henry saw me, there was a moment of stiffness and panic, but then he acted as if nothing had happened. Sarah also saw us. You guys are here. Maria, just in time to help me take a few pictures with Henry. Sarah called over and handed me the phone. Henry's expression paused for a moment as he looked at me again. I'm really so happy today. This is the fireworks that Henry set off for me. I want to cherish and remember this moment forever. Sarah walked to Henry's side, gazing at him affectionately as she spoke. Henry's expression softened as he embraced her. I paused, holding Sarah's phone in my hand. It turns out today is the grand fireworks show that Henry is holding for Sarah. I watched the scene of them embracing in the camera. Henry gently held Sarah, who leaned against his chest with a smile of happiness and contentment. Behind them were magnificent fireworks, so beautiful and romantic. I quietly helped them take pictures. Once, on my birthday, Henry also set off a lake full of fireworks for me. Sarah. Sarah said sadly at the time, I really envy you all. I hope there will be someone who treats me this well in the future. I comforted her then, saying that there would be. Nowadays, she really did it. The phone in my hand was taken by John. All right, you're not here just to take pictures of them. John threw the phone over, Henry caught it and handed it to Sarah. After the fireworks show, Sarah and I went to the restroom. However, there were too many people in the restroom, so I decided not to go. However, on the way back, I heard the conversation of the two people waiting for us. "It seems like you and Sarah are having a great time. You haven't been this happy with Maria in a long time, right?" John said. "Indeed, it feels like Sarah and I have rekindled the feelings I once had with Maria. Sarah is even more well-behaved than Maria, and she is attentive and considerate, making me feel comfortable and happy," Henry said. "Then why not just make the best of a mistake? Sarah really does suit you better, Maria. You said she can be quite stubborn at times, which annoys you, right?" John said. "John, my relationship with Maria after so many years can't just be cut off like that. Sarah also said she doesn't seek a result, as long as she can spend this time happily, she would be very satisfied." "What a silly girl," Henry sighed. Back at the villa, John suddenly hugged me and kissed me. Then he loosened his grip a bit and looked at me seriously. "Maria, do you know? You are the best, Maria, no need to compare with anyone." I stared at him in a daze, as if responding to Henry's comparison of me to Sarah. Why does he understand me so well? Knowing the little habits that Henry has forgotten, what candies I like to eat, what dishes I enjoy, what movies I like to watch. He advanced a little more than before. I did not object. He stared at me in a daze, then picked me up horizontally and carried me into his room. I have only ever had one man, Henry. When Henry pursued me, I was filled with distrust. But his seriousness and determination, his attitude towards my grandmother and the help he provided behind the scenes, moved me. Later, because his parents disagreed, they cut off his financial support. I thought that was the time for him to see the gap between us. But he did not compromise. Instead, he worked and attended classes with me. Later, it was his parents who, out of concern, compromised. I was finally able to be truly together with him. When my only grandmother passed away, he held me tightly, saying that I still had him. He would always be by my side. It was once such a relationship, but now it has become unrecognizable. If that's the case, then learn to change to another man. On Friday, a group of people went to a resort to spend the weekend. When the rooms were being assigned at the guest house, Henry looked unhappy. He privately said to John, "Are you really planning to share a room? Let's get separate rooms." "It's just the same room, you know I hate her, what are you worried about?" John said. I suddenly appeared, and Henry could only swallow the words he wanted to say at the sight of my unpleasant expression. The next morning, Henry, with a pale face, called John away. I happened to be on the balcony upstairs, hearing their voices below. "Did you sleep last night?" Henry asked angrily. "Did you not sleep well with your good girlfriend last night and come to eavesdrop on us, Henry? You've become a pervert," John said. "John, are you trying to play tricks on me?" Henry said angrily, "Enough, I don't need you to pretend to be Maria's boyfriend anymore." So how do you plan to say it? Say that you are her boyfriend? Say that you want to play around outside and have fun with her friends, so you lied to her that I am her boyfriend? John sneered, "Do you dare to say that? You?" Henry was taken aback. John sneered, "Do you dare to say it? You?" Henry was taken aback. "Besides, what about your new girlfriend? You seem to like her quite a bit, and she's right there," John said. "I made it clear to Sarah from the very beginning that it was just a short-term relationship. I never intended to give up on Maria. Maria loves me too. She will regain her memory sooner or later. I will sincerely apologize to her, I will propose to her, and swear that there will only be her as my woman from now on. She will definitely forgive me." "And you actually took the opportunity to sleep with her without considering brotherly loyalty?" Henry was furious. "John, didn't you say you hated her?" When did I say I hated her? Isn't it all of you who are saying that?" John scoffed. Henry clenched his fist and glared at him. "I really didn't expect this, my good brother, that you would dig such a big pit for me. You hide your sordid thoughts about Maria and take advantage of this opportunity to get her. Henry, everything was brought about by you. That sentence 'I am his boyfriend' was said by you. John said calmly. Henry's face was pale and filled with panic. Since Maria and I have already been involved, and you also think Sarah is great, isn't it better to just let it be as I said last time? When Maria regains her memory, you won't need to ask for forgiveness, I'll ask for forgiveness. Wouldn't that make everyone happy? John said. Henry looked at him and sneered, I don't care about the relationship you have with Maria now. Perhaps it will make her forgive me a little more. I will end my relationship with Sarah soon, and I will work hard to make amends. I want to see whose side Maria's scale will ultimately tip. I was bored, fiddling with the flowers in the pot on the balcony upstairs. But saw Sarah, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation from the other side of the wall downstairs, run away in a panic after hearing Henry's words. In the afternoon, the men were fishing. Sarah suddenly called out to me, Maria, let's go pick grapes, it looks like so much fun. I gave her a meaningful glance and smiled as I went with her. In the vineyard. Sarah suddenly handed me her phone, Maria, let me show you something. I took it and looked at it. There are many pictures, you can flip through them slowly. I took these from Henry's phone, Sarah said with a hint of sarcasm. I looked at her phone, one intimate photo after another of me and Henry, kissing photos, pictures taken in bed, all there. I handed the phone back to her, looking at her, what does this mean? She was taken aback and sneered, what do you mean? Henry said you are John's boyfriend, yet you have so many intimate photos with Henry, spanning from campus to now. What do you think that means? Oh, but everyone says my boyfriend is John. I said with a calm expression. Maria, are you really that foolish? Can't you see from these photos? Henry is lying to you. Your boyfriend has always been Henry. It was never John. Henry only took advantage of your amnesia, he didn't want to be your boyfriend anymore, so he tricked you into thinking of John as your boyfriend, allowing him to go out and have fun. John is also working with Henry to deceive you. You're just being played around, everyone sees you as a joke. I, as your friend, couldn't stand by and just had to tell you. Sarah said impatiently, laying it all out. I maintained a calm expression. She stared at me, still with the same unchanged look. I smiled and said, so what? Is there anything wrong with me now? Is John treating me badly? Or is he worse than Henry was back then? She stared at me in disbelief, her eyes wide, you actually know all this and can be so calm? Then, as if realizing something, she said, you didn't really lose your memory, did you? I was fiddling with the grapes in my hand, you found me. As a friend, you can't tell anyone, okay? You. She looked at me in shock, you actually never lost your memory, yet you still did this with John. Maria, how could you hide it so deeply? I'm going to tell Henry, I'm going to tell John, you never had amnesia at all. You've been deceiving them from the very beginning. I ate a grape and laughed at her, are you sure you want to say it? Are you sure that if you pull everything apart, you can still stay by Henry's side? She paused, her expression suddenly flustered, as if she recalled what Henry had said in the morning about wanting to end their relationship. Immediately, she snorted again, I told Henry that you were pretending to have amnesia. He knows you've been lying to him, and you even deliberately slept with John. Do you think he would still want you? Wouldn't he lean more towards me? I'm sorry, but I can't ruin the image I've maintained in front of him. I will sadly say that it was because Henry deceived me, thinking he no longer wanted me. I was hurt, so I threw myself into John's arms. I smiled at her. Do you think he believes I intentionally deceived him, or that I was heartbroken? Do you think he feels more guilty and pity for me, or that he won't want me anymore? Just now, she heard that Henry didn't mind me sleeping with John, huh? Sarah looked at me like this, and she took a step back in fear, staring at me in disbelief, as if she had just met me today. Maria, I didn't expect this to be your true self. You are nothing like what you used to show. What was I like before? I laughed and looked at her. Sarah, you put so much effort into becoming good friends with me, going to great lengths to get close to Henry. Don't you understand what you're doing it for? Why are you so obsessed with the idea that I have other thoughts? Sarah's face turned pale. I truly love Henry. And you've been pretending all along. You knew exactly what was going on and still slept with John. You are not at all like what others have always thought, strong, brave, kind, and sincere, wholeheartedly loving Henry. You are not like this at all. You do not love Henry at all. Who says I don't love Henry anymore? I found it ironic. If it weren't for him pushing me towards John, wouldn't I have always loved Henry? Have I ever betrayed him like he betrayed me? I looked at her in surprise. Why are you being so sanctimonious with me? If Henry had nothing, would you still be able to say that you truly love him? Sarah's face turned pale and then flushed. You. Maria, you're so scary. Am I scary? The person who pushes his girlfriend towards other men isn't scary, but I am. The man who cheats with his girlfriend's friend isn't scary, but I am. I smiled at her. Sarah, you should be grateful. I will only hold one of John or Henry in my hand, and I have no intention of competing with you for anything. Henry has already become dirty in my eyes. If you want him, you have to rely on your own ability to hold on to him. I won't ruin him, you can rest assured. Sarah trembled as she looked at me. So, you, Maria, don't love Henry or John. You just want to lean on a rich man, whether it's Henry or John. As long as he can give you a good life, you can. I became a little impatient. I said I love Henry, but what do I get in return? Why should I still love a man like this? John also deceived me, so why should I give him my whole heart? It's just that compared to Henry, John doesn't seem as dirty in my eyes. As long as he treats me well and gives me what I want, I will also treat him well. Sarah looked at me. Are you really so sure that John will be in your grasp? He is known among that group of friends as the most inscrutable and terrifying person. I toyed with the grape in my hand. You rely on your own abilities, and I rely on mine. We both know what a life of poverty is like, how you want to act, the power of decision is all yours. If Sarah doesn't do anything to me, I won't know how. If she can't think straight and treats me like an enemy again. I suddenly felt that there was a figure outside the vineyard eavesdropping. When I turned my head to look, only the branches and leaves had moved. Sarah and I walked out of the vineyard carrying a basket of grapes. John walked over and came to me, taking the basket from my hands. I've been worried about finding you after such a long time, he said gently, wrapping his arm around me as we walked towards the guest house. Sarah seemed to be looking at me, looking at the man beside me, wondering why he would treat me this way. Henry also came over, but he wasn't looking for Sarah. Instead, he coldly stared at us, glaring at John. I glanced at him with my usual curiosity. Henry suddenly stepped forward. Maria, there's a natural horse ranch nearby. You said you wanted to ride before, so I'll take you there later. I looked up at John and said, did I ever mention that I wanted to ride a horse? Then take me when the time comes. Okay, let's go wash the grapes first. John replied, taking me away. I can feel Sarah's jealous eyes behind me. We sat at the table, and I was peeling a grape when I felt John's gaze on me, which seemed a bit strange. I looked up, and he appeared as usual, gentle and steady. I smiled as I fed him grapes. He opened his mouth to eat, holding my hand, entangling it around my fingers, wanting to clean up every drop of juice. Ever since we became intimate, he has been able to stir up ambiguity at any moment. Later, we put on our gear and went to the racetrack. A few young gentlemen were already riding horses, while Henry and Sarah were still by the stables. Sarah, what kind of horse should I choose? Sarah was saying, while Henry was distracted. Sarah, I have something to tell you, Henry suddenly spoke up. Sarah was a bit flustered, she knew what Henry was about to say. Suddenly, she saw us and hurriedly called out, "Ah, Maria, you're here." We walked over. Have you made your choice? I asked with a smile. John was explaining to the stable staff that he wanted them to choose a gentle, beautiful horse of suitable size for me. John took me for a ride on the horse for a while, and then we heard something had happened over by Henry. Be careful, Henry. Sarah. Ah. A horse that had been released at some unknown time charged uncontrollably towards Henry. Sarah rode her horse to block despite the danger. She was knocked off her horse. After being injured, Henry quickly took him to the medical room at the resort. The racetrack staff were whispering, not understanding why they had to rush to block. The other riders all avoided it. With Henry's riding skills, he could easily steer clear. Even if he couldn't avoid it, Henry was firmly holding the reins while on the horse and wouldn't easily fall off. It was much better than Sarah, who couldn't even sit steadily and rushed to block, causing herself to fall off due to the excessive force of the collision. If something goes wrong and they blame it on their racetrack, it would truly be an undeserved disaster. Of course, Henry won't hear this. Sarah was sent back to the city hospital. The doctor said she would probably need to use a wheelchair for a few months. When John and I returned to the villa, I couldn't help but sigh. Sarah really is willing to go all out for herself. It all depends on whether she can get what she wishes for. When John held me while sleeping, he said, "If I really encounter danger, I don't want you to come save me like this, I want you to be safer." I looked up at him, wondering how it felt to make excuses for myself. Did he know that I would never take risks to save him? "If you encounter danger, I will do anything," he said seriously again. I smiled and gently stroked his face. "We're all fine, there won't be any danger." He grabbed my hand on his face, kissed it near his mouth, and then leaned his body closer. Recently, Henry has spent a lot of time in the hospital. Sarah has posted many moments on social media, all showing the flowers and food that Henry brought her in the hospital, as well as how he takes care of her. She looks so happy. "I've been doing quite well lately." I mentioned that I love Henry. So whenever I see Henry pushing me towards John, it always affects my mood a bit. I haven't seen him much lately. But sometimes, it's really best not to dwell on it. My interior design work won an award. This is the piece I submitted for the competition some time ago. At that time, I also told Henry, "You have to come to the award ceremony. If I win, I want to share this joy with you right away." He was still saying at that time that there was a brother's birthday that day, so let's talk later. But he came today. I received the award that belonged to me on stage and gave a speech. Then I came down from the stage and ran in that direction. Henry stepped forward excitedly. I threw myself into the arms of the man I liked, who was holding my favorite flowers. John spun me around twice and kissed my face, saying, "Maria is the best." Henry stood over there, staring at us intently, his crimson eyes, his hands clenched tightly. It was Grandma's death anniversary. When John and I arrived, Henry was already there. Henry looked at me gently as I walked over. "I have tidied up around Grandma's gravestone." "Ah, thank you." I expressed my gratitude. "John, make sure to thank your brother properly." "Sure. I will treat my good brother well when the time comes." John placed the items in front of his grandmother's grave, "But I already came to clean it up yesterday, so there's no need to trouble my good brother anymore. John and I are properly paying tribute to Grandma. I told Grandma that John treats me very well, and I am very happy, so she can rest assured." Henry stood by, clenching his fists, watching us pay our respects together. I knew John had prevented Henry from telling me the truth. He said, "Do you really think that when she hasn't regained her memory and has no feelings for you, she would accept what you did to deceive her? Or would she hate you to the core?" Henry was scared. But these days he felt like an outsider, completely unaware of any concern from me, and he couldn't hold back any longer. He blocked my way home from work. "Maria." He seemed to gaze at me with deep affection, as if he hadn't been able to look at me so freely for a long time. I frowned. "Henry, is there something wrong?" "Maria, I have already ended my relationship with Sarah." He stepped forward and said anxiously. I stepped back and said, "What does this have to do with me?" "Maria, I want you to know that Sarah and I were just a wrong relationship. It was her, she kept approaching me." He said anxiously, "I have realized my mistakes in time and corrected them." I frowned. "You don't have to say these things to me." He anxiously shook his head. "I originally wanted to wait for you to regain your memory, but I really can't wait any longer. I need you to know, Maria, it's me, actually your boyfriend is. Henry, you really don't need to come and say something so nonsensical to me. John is your good brother, isn't he? I interrupted him directly. John is no longer my good brother, he said angrily. It was him, it was he who schemed to take you away. What are you even saying? I really don't understand, please stop doing this. I was thinking of a way to leave him behind when I saw John's car coming this way. John. I ran over. John hurriedly stopped the car, got out, and came over to hug me. I seemed to be afraid as I leaned into his embrace. He hugged me and glared at Henry, who was standing there. Henry, what crazy thing are you up to again? John. Henry stepped forward, clenching his fist, filled with such great anger. Henry, do you think that by going crazy you can get what you want? The reason you can still appear in front of Maria is that Maria doesn't understand what kind of person you are. But if you keep going crazy like this, Maria will always avoid you. I will also always protect her and won't let you appear in front of her again. We brothers, our circle, can also be dispersed. John said in a deep voice, with a strong implication, a thick warning, and a heavy threat. Henry was stunned. He knew what John meant. If he spoke the truth, I would have a reaction. If this continued, John would flip the table, and he, Henry, would be even less able to see me. I was taken away in the car by John, while Henry looked at the redness in my eyes. I turned to look at the man driving, not knowing why. Recently, I felt that he was following my expectations a bit too closely. He seemed to know how I wanted him to act. But how could he know? I am just a woman who has lost her memory. Sarah asked to meet, saying that she has finally given up completely. Once her leg injury heals, she will leave this city. So I don't have to worry about her revealing the truth anymore. The implication is that she's threatening me, saying that if I don't see her, she might expose the truth. I arrived at the lake where she had arranged to meet, and she was sitting in a wheelchair by the bench. Do you still need a wheelchair? I walked over. Are you really leaving? She smiled at me and gestured for me to sit. What are you doing here? You haven't gained anything, just added to your sorrow. I really love Henry. I shrugged and sat down on the bench. I hope you can think more positively. She looked at me and said, I really admire you for making both Henry and John love you so much. I looked at her and raised an eyebrow. You're not secretly recording this, are you? She paused, smiled, and handed her the voice recorder from her pocket. You're really impressive. I turned off the recording and gave it back to her. You don't have to think so highly of yourself. Does Henry love me? Hasn't he already betrayed me? John, who knows what the future will hold? I said sarcastically. She looked at me. Once I thought you approached everything with truth and goodness, but now I find you approach everything with defensiveness and reservation. I frowned. You don't always have to look at me with disbelief. I just believe that one must love oneself first. This principle isn't hard to understand, right? But you still got everything, while I got nothing. She said, lost in sadness. Why don't you think a little more broadly? Don't be so fixated on the word love. With what you've done for Henry, isn't it easy to earn a fortune for the rest of your life? I said. She looked at me in confusion. Don't you hate me? It was I who seduced Henry, taking advantage of your friend's opportunity to get close to him. At first, he didn't pay any attention to me. It was just later that he wanted to seek some excitement. He suffered a bit with you, so I became even more gentle and considerate towards him, considerate enough to tell him that I don't seek results, that I won't entangle him, that being happy is enough. He then found in me the shadow of you from the past, treating me so well. I shook my head. Is it right for a man to blame others for seducing him after he's taken everything? When I realized that you weren't truly sincere with me, I no longer considered you a good friend. Otherwise, it would be a double betrayal for me. Since I don't consider you a true friend, and you haven't harmed me yet, what you do has nothing to do with me. Only Henry has betrayed me. She smiled. I really admire you. But... Her eyes glanced in the direction behind me. Then he said, I still hate you, Maria, because you got everything I ever wanted. She said this, and before I could react, she had already taken a knife out of her pocket and stood up to stab me directly. Ah! I jumped up in fright and stepped back. She came straight at me, stabbing fiercely with a knife again and again. Are you crazy? Sarah, is it worth sacrificing your future for a man? I called out, but as I raised my hand to block the knife, I found that the blade aimed at me was not sharp. Maria! Maria! At that moment, two terrified voices rang out from both sides. John and Henry rushed towards me in terror. John shielded me with his body and held me close to avoid danger. Henry kicked Sarah over. Ah! Sarah fell to the ground, the knife in her hand dropped. He turned his head to glance at me, who was being protected, and viciously raised his foot to stomp down. Henry, stop. Enough, that knife is a retractable prop knife. I said hurriedly. Henry paused. John looked at me anxiously in his arms, examining me from head to toe to see if there was anything wrong. Sarah collapsed on the ground, laughing. Maria, after being friends for so many years, I must have learned a thing or two, right? I didn't make a fuss with my second half of life. What do you want to do? Henry glared at Sarah sharply. John, holding me tightly, looked over with a gloomy expression after knowing that I was fine. Sarah looked at Henry with tears in her eyes, then glanced at John beside me, who was about to tear her apart, and suddenly burst into wild laughter. I was helpless, knowing what she was about to do. You two big men, wealthy and powerful princes of the capital, have been completely fooled by a woman. Sarah mocked with a smile, pointing at me, so weak in John's arms, while both of their faces were dark. Maria hasn't lost her memory at all. Henry was taken aback. Sarah looked at Henry. You told me she loves you very much, and when she regains her memory, she will definitely not be able to let you go. But she didn't lose her memory at all, she really is with John. You should understand why, right? Because she doesn't love you that much at all. She knows you betrayed her, so she can just turn around and find herself a better partner. A partner who can continue to provide her with a good life. Sarah scoffed and shouted, then looked at John, and John, I really don't understand why you could fall in love with your brother's woman. She's been sleeping with Henry for so many years. She wouldn't love you any more than that, it's just that you have the same strength as Henry, the same ability to give her the best of everything. If you had nothing, do you really think she would throw herself into your arms? She lay there laughing. You all are really ridiculous, causing a rift among brothers and turning the world upside down for a woman who could abandon you at any moment. Shut up. John said angrily to Sarah, then lowered his head and spoke softly, Maria, let's go back. I looked up at him, and he seemed no different. His reactions always surprised me. Henry, do you dare to ask? Do you dare to ask Maria if she has lost her memory? Sarah mocked self-deprecatingly. Henry stood there, trembling with a kind of panic. Confused and frantically trying to escape. Because of Sarah's commotion and my silence, a corner of something has been revealed. He is afraid to touch this truth. Because if it's true, it means that I really don't love him, that I really have willingly thrown myself into John's arms. Maria, we are leaving here. John held me firmly, wanting to take me away. I looked at Henry, who was standing there, panicking and trembling, and didn't let John take him away. No, I have never lost my memory, I said calmly. Henry's figure swayed as he turned his trembling gaze towards me. John, however, merely lowered his eyes, as if he were not surprised at all. Sarah, lying there, looked at Henry and laughed out loud, tears streaming down her face. I looked at Henry and said, if you had just waited one more second, I would have laughed out loud and told you that I was teasing you. But you wouldn't wait even a second, immediately denying your relationship with me and pushing John over. Henry took a step back, trembling, shaking his head in panic. Maria, I am actually still giving you a chance, as long as you quickly realize your mistakes. But you let other men be my boyfriend, you let other men take care of me. You openly embrace Sarah in front of me, kissing her before my eyes. You light up a sky full of fireworks for her, looking at her with the same affection you once showed me. So, I have finally given you up, I said. Henry trembled with panic. Why you? Maria, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He trembled as he stepped forward. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I truly regret it, Maria. I just took a wrong turn for a moment. He stepped forward trembling, but John glared at him darkly and protectively held me tight, ensuring that he wouldn't touch me even a little. I really know I was wrong, Maria. I have always loved only you. The one I have always wanted to marry is you. His eyes were filled with tears of panic, the panic of knowing he was about to lose everything. He trembled as he took something out of his pocket. I have long prepared our rings. I have long been ready to propose to you. I wanted to wait for you to regain your memory, and then I would ask for your forgiveness. I will spend my whole life making up for everything. I will take care of you for a lifetime, giving you everything you want. He trembled as he took out the ring from the box. Maria, I really love you. Will you forgive me? I know you love me, you do love me, you once loved me so much, we once loved each other so deeply. Maria, give me a chance to make it right. Maria. Henry. John waved away the ring in his hand. Don't you understand? The moment you betrayed Maria, you lost her. You dirty man, what right do you have to ask for forgiveness? You pushed Maria into my arms with your own hands. Now, Maria is mine. You will never have another chance. I was taken aback by what John said and looked up at him. How could he say such filthy words? Such words are not something a man would say to another man. I was the only one who said something similar that day in the vineyard. I was momentarily stunned again. No. It won't be. Henry scrambled to pick up the ring. It won't happen. Maria loves me so much. She once loved me so much. I have a fever and she will coax me, feeding me porridge and medicine mouth to mouth. I rushed back from out of town because of the heavy rain and just returned in the morning. She waited for me on the sofa all night. He thought I had a car accident, and when he found out I was just slightly injured, he joyfully cried and threw himself into my arms, holding me tightly all night long. She said that having me by her side makes her very happy, very content. In my arms, there have been so many moments of joy and happiness. She loves me very much, she wouldn't want to part with me. He stood there, trembling, crying and speaking, unwilling to accept it, filled with regret. Sarah slumped there, watching Henry like that, unsure whether it was the pleasure of revenge or sorrow. Henry, I loved you. Now, I don't love you anymore, I said softly. Then, I let John turn me around and leave. Maria. Behind her was Henry's piercing and desperate voice. He knew he had truly lost me forever. There was no chance left. John took me back home. He wanted to see if I was hurt. I let him check. Then he hugged me and kissed me. Maria, I love you, no matter what you look like, I love you. I won't ask for all your love. Just love me like you once loved Henry. I will be loyal, pure, and dedicate everything. He spoke so softly, and also took out an extremely luxurious ring, holding my hand so tightly, so seriously, so nervously. I was momentarily stunned, looking up at him, as if I had confirmed. You heard my conversation with Sarah that day in the vineyard? He nodded. I smiled, truly a mantis stalking the cicada, while the yellow bird waits behind. I loosened my fingers, allowing him to excitedly tremble as he put the ring on for me. Let him kiss my finger. One day, in front of me, paint a picture for me, I said. He was taken aback and held me tightly. Okay. When John brought me home, all his actions indicated it. He didn't hate me. Rather, he liked me. Just because I was once in Henry's arms. So, he speaks with a mouth full of bitterness. But how much do I like it? I'm not sure. Will I not cherish it once I have it? I'm not sure. Until I saw many of my sketches in his study. They were all drawn by him, stroke by stroke, relying on his imagination. All kinds of me, every frown and smile. He freely releases so much affection through his pen. I then understood that he had secretly loved me for a long time. He finally got the chance to have me. He is even cleaner than Henry. That day, I learned that he had only ever had me as a woman. So, very good. I will love him too. He held me tightly, expressing his feelings. I love you, Maria, from that day long ago at Henry's house, when you treated me like Henry, leaping from behind the sofa to wrap around me, softly whispering good morning in my ear.